empowering webinars, calling interesting personalities, just to be able to understand what kinds of holistic interventions are there available and how you can benefit from them, what kind of tools that you can learn to help yourself and to help others in need. Very recently, we've also started a one-on-one online counseling on our website as well. So for any of you interested in a counseling sessions, in attending all our webinars, please do sign in, log into waitt.in, and that's where you will get all the information regarding all the work that we do in terms of mental health. Thank you again so much for being here on this Saturday morning. And I'm very excited and happy to introduce our guest for this morning. And she's a music therapist. Her name is Purvaa Sampath, all the way from Bangalore. Purvaa is the founder and director of Maya's Universe, and she's a graduate from Berklee College of Music and one of the few CBMT board certified music therapists and NMT, which is neurologic music therapist in the country. She's also had the opportunity to practice as a student music therapist in some of the top institutions like Perkins School for the Blind and Boston's Children's Hospital in Massachusetts. She's also worked in an award-winning arts therapy organization called A Place to Be. In Bangalore, she works as a music therapist with multiple institutions, including KDBAMS, a psychiatric hospital and residential facility, Flame, etc. She's also teaching introductory courses on music therapy as a part of PG Diploma program in Xavier's College in Mumbai. Her aim is to create a clinical standard for music therapy and provide access to education in order to establish and grow the industry of music therapy in India. Wow, Purvaa, that's like such fantastic amount of work that you are doing, and you're so young and you've just started, and I really can't wait to hear more about your journey and what being a music therapist is like. So let's just begin with the very first question. What exactly is music therapy?
Sure. Thank you so much, Mrunal, for having me. And I'm just really happy to be here and speak to a new group of people about what music therapy is and why I do what I do. So to answer your question, music therapy essentially is the intersection between psychology, neuroscience, and music, where we use music interventions, music-based skills to understand the kind of impact it has on our brain and therefore the impact that it has on our body and our emotions and our behavior.
So how does the brain and the body process music? When you said neurological connections, I mean, if you could just break it down to all our all the laypersons in the audience, what does that really mean in terms of neurological sense, and how is the brain and our body processing all of this music that we hear around us, I think 24 hours, right from the horns blazing on the streets to constant TV or the computers that are on? What does this really mean, all of this, for our brains and our bodies?
Absolutely. So if you look, we have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere in our brain. And often the misconception is that anything to do with the performing arts is processed in the right because it's the creative aspect of the brain. And the left is only your analytical things like logic and reasoning. But it will surprise you to know that music is actually one of the only activities that engages both the right and the left hemisphere, because there is a lot of analytical reasoning, a lot of mathematics really in music. So when you're listening to a piece of music and you either start tapping your foot, or maybe if you're walking in a mall and they have music blaring, you'll notice in the future, if you haven't already, that you actually start walking to the beat of the music that you're listening to. It's also why gyms always have loud and fast-paced music, and that's because of one of the really unique abilities that human beings have called rhythmic energy. So, if this was your brain and this is your left hemisphere and your right hemisphere, if you looked at the intersection of it, you have cortex placed right here, and you have your motor cortex that's right above the auditory cortex like this, right? So when that happens, and you have a strong beat that you're listening to, what happens is you have the synapses in your auditory cortex begin to go off. So it starts vibrating, it gets busy. And because the motor cortex is right next to it, it actually starts affecting your motor cortex too. That's why you end up tapping your foot or moving your head, or if you're driving, which when I'm driving, I always end up tapping my finger on the steering wheel, right? So we all have different ways of entraining to rhythm, but it's something that is very innate to us, just like breathing is. We don't learn how to do it like how we learn how to talk, walk. No, responding to rhythm is something that not only in humans but even in animals, from your birds to your dogs. I know that my dog rhythmically entrains a lot. So given that we have rhythmic entrainment, that's an innate ability to us, especially in neurologic music therapy, we extensively use that as a foundation for a lot of the interventions that we have when it comes to addressing maybe physical issues or even cognitive issues.
So listening to all of this, I feel that so much, as you said, the way our bodies and our brain respond to music, it seems like all of this we do on an unconscious level. We don't really know that we are responding, or we are trying to walk to a beat of the music in a mall or working out in a gym. So most of this activity is happening unconsciously. So what really is that, what is the effect of that music that's happening on our brain, and how can we become conscious of all the music, all the, it's not even really music, all the noise that is surrounding us? And is that detrimental, the kind of music and the noise that we are subjected to subconsciously all the time in the day?
So I'd like to break down that question and answer different aspects of it. So to start off with, every time you listen to music, right, or you engage even just by humming along to a tune, or by tapping your foot along to a tune, you are actually giving your brain a full body workout, right? So you have your auditory cortex that is engaged because you have auditory input when you're listening to music. You have your physical body, right? So your motor cortex that's engaged if you're moving to music in some way. If it's a song that you know and you're singing along to the lyrics, then you have your language centers that are engaged. You have your memory centers that are engaged, because a lot of us associate memories with music. Like, I know even today, if I listen to a lullaby that my mom used to sing to me, for me the imagery or the visual that I have in my head is of my mother, of the bedroom that we were in, of the house that we lived in 20 something years ago, right? So all of these different areas of your brain are engaged, and it's like giving your brain a full body workout every time you engage in music in some way or the other. So given that we are constantly subjected to sound, let's kind of look at what is music versus what is noise, right? So we have sounds constantly in our environment, and in fact, as humans, we are the way our body develops in the womb itself, our auditory system is the first sensory system to completely develop by the end of the second trimester and the beginning of the third trimester, which means for the last 2 to 3 months that a fetus is in the womb, the way it understands the world around it is through sound. And our vision, in fact, which is what we rely on the most once we come into this world, is the last to develop. So you'll see that when you have cases of like premature births, sometimes the vision is what gets affected. So maybe they end up wearing glasses earlier, or maybe they develop some kind of issues with their vision. So given that the auditory system is the way we understand the world around us first, it is also what we depend on the most in our lifetime. So because of this relationship that we have with our auditory sense and the surroundings that we live in, music is nothing but organized sound, right? So noise is what is unorganized, unpredictable, maybe even chaotic. And music can also be chaotic sometimes, but at the same time, it's organized sound. So if I'm going to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, how I wonder what you you have that need to say "ar" to complete that phrase, right? Because that's how music is designed. That's how phrases are designed. That's how even lyrics are designed, right? From your rhyming words to the different kinds of syllables that you use, whatever language it is that you listen to music in. When it comes to music therapy, there isn't really anything called detrimental music, right? So, I mean, of course, if you're listening to loud sounds, be it music or be it noise, constantly, it is going to have an effect on your eardrums over time. But when it comes to the kind of music itself, there is nothing really that is detrimental unless you have negative associations with that kind of music that is impacting you emotionally. In music therapy, we always go with client preferred music. So I might have a client that really enjoys Carnatic music, and that is their preferred way of connecting or preferred way of expressing themselves. So for that client, Carnatic music is what I'll use. But if I have another client who is a huge fan of classic rock or is a huge fan of K-pop, which for some reason has gotten really popular in the last year or so, then that's the kind of music I'm going to be using with them, because that is what they relate to, that is what they have associations with. And therefore that's the kind of music that's going to motivate them to work on their non-musical goals at the end of the day.
So, Purva, I have a question then, regarding that. That
Mhm.
all of us who, listen in India to Indian classical music, whether it's Carnatic music or whether it's Hindustani classical music, it is believed that this music is so highly evolved, highly intellectual, that with the whole frequency bit is also a very interesting concept in that. That when you listen to certain frequencies, it is having an impact on your brain, on your body, on the way you live. So when we listen to certain classical musicians, certain ragas, which are like hundreds and thousands of years old, as you said, that there is no such thing as detrimental music, but surely there is some form of music which is simply because of its natural healing capacity, its frequencies, the way it's been designed and it's been in existence for so many thousands of years, so many decades. Surely that is a much better way. Much better to listen to, and to feel the effect of, say, a Hindustani classical music versus a band playing metal. I'm sure there's a difference in the way our brain is perceiving that. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so actually, in reality, there is a huge difference between music therapy and what we call sound therapy, right? So sound therapy focuses more on the frequencies. It focuses more on the tonality of the sound. It
Right.
focuses more on the instruments itself, as opposed to music therapy. Music therapy looks purely at the elements of music, right? And there are 5 elements of music that we look at. We look at rhythm, we look at melody, we look at pitch, we look at timbre, which is the quality of sound, and finally we look at harmony, which is when you have 2 or more melodies that are playing at the same time that creates harmony. So you can find these 5 elements of music in a beautiful Hindustani classical composition. You can also find it in a metal piece, right? So as a music therapist, my job then is to be able to take that piece of music and then customize that piece of music into an intervention for my client. Now, when I'm talking about interventions for clients and I'm saying non-musical goals, there are 5 areas that we predominantly look at when we are creating goals and objectives for a client, right? So the first one is physical goals. So anything to do with movement. It could be gross motor movements, like larger body parts, like maybe raising your hands, maybe walking, maybe being able to sit down and get up, right? So that could be some of the physical goals. It could be fine motor goals, so being able to do something like pick up this bottle, right? Or being able to write, being able to use your fingers. So we call this the pincer grip. So being able to hold things or being able to stretch your hand out. So these are some of the fine motor skills that we work on. Next, we look at cognitive goals, and cognitive goals has everything to do with the way your brain processes around. right? So it could be understanding sequences. So you and I know that in the morning when we get up to brush our teeth, we turn the tap on, we first, keep our toothbrush under the running water, and then we open the cap of our toothpaste, we squeeze a little bit on, we know how much to squeeze, then we close it, and then we brush, and then we rinse, we wash up. So these are things that come very, we don't even have to think about it, right? So this sequencing comes very easily to us because it's become a habit. But for someone that's differently able, say maybe somebody that's on the autism spectrum, they don't understand the sequences, so they might miss a step here or there when it comes to the sequences. And music, if you listen to a piece of music, is actually nothing but sequences, right? You have a chorus, you have a verse, you have a rhythmic pattern that's staying the same throughout a piece of music, or you have multiple instruments that are layered one on top of another to create that piece of music. So we can use music to address sequencing. We can use music to address learning, learning abilities, learning capabilities also. We can use music to address attention span, use it to address concentration and focus. And there are so many other cognitive areas that music can address and music can actually help develop. So what happens when you use music as a way is that there are certain areas of your brain that light up, which otherwise when you're doing these everyday activities go unused, right? Or predominantly are not really used as much. So if you have someone that is not able to process a certain aspect of maybe sequencing or a certain movement that they're not able to do because of maybe neural damage or because of the way their brain has developed, then using music actually helps build neural pathways around that damaged area. So you are teaching them how to do something, but you're using music to do it, which is making it easier, or which is creating a new neural pathway for them to be able to do it. Now, when it comes to Hindustani or classical music, Indian classical music versus, what we know is like popular Western music, or even in India itself, you have when we say Indian music, we predominantly focus on just Carnatic or Hindustani. But if you actually look at it, Indian music is so much more, right? We have our folk music. Language plays a huge role in our music. You go to the Northeast, and what we call folk music there is so different from what you would call folk music in Karnataka or in Tamil Nadu, for that matter, right? And these are things that that are very real and very interwoven into the culture. In India, one of the challenges really when it comes to music therapy is that every neighborhood has its own dialect, every neighborhood has its own sound, every neighborhood has its own identity. So when you have a country that is so diverse, then how do you generalize something like music therapy? So one of the ways that we've been able to do it so far is in Carnatic music or Hindustani music. But if you actually look at our country right now, look at the way the internet and social media has pretty much changed our lives and made the entire world a much smaller place. We can't take for granted that Indian music is equal to just Carnatic or Hindustani music. And yes, being a Carnatic musician myself, I completely agree that there is something when it comes to our Indian classical music. It has evolved over centuries, really. And go back and look at the texts right from the first text really was in the 7th century, that then got really developed by the 13th century, which then kind of set the structure for Carnatic music and Hindustani music that we know today. It's definitely something that is being passed down from generation to generation, right? For us, Carnatic music, the way you learn it, and I'm sure this is the same for Hindustani music too, is it's not something that you buy a textbook and then you learn on your own. It's not something that you can, okay, I listen to someone sing and then I'm going to sing along and I know the song. Right? That's not how Carnatic music or Hindustani music works. And a lot of it has to do with the way it has been passed down. And a lot of it also has to do with how, the reason gharanas exist is because different people sing or interpret music different ways. And the same thing in Carnatic music too. You can have two people singing the same composition, but their alap is not going to be the same. Even if they're doing the the many runs or the many sangatis that we call in Carnatic music, it's never going to be the same. Even the gamakas that they do, which is the slight voice modulations when they go from one note to the other, differs. And so there is a massive variability in Carnatic music and Hindustani music that, if you look at it from a clinical aspect, makes it very difficult to really pin down in research. Right, so research, and there are people that are doing really good work, like Dr. Shantala Hegde and Nimhans, who've really kind of dedicated years in trying to understand why does Carnatic music or Hindustani music have the kind of impact that it does compared to other styles of music, right? So we haven't gotten there yet, because the biggest obstacle or challenge that we have is the fact that it is so open to interpretation that, one, not only is the musician interpreting it in many different ways, but the audience that is listening to it is also interpreting it in many different ways. So while you and I understand, the impact that it has on us, we understand the emotional impact, maybe even the cognitive impact, the physical impact that it has on us. When it comes to research, when it comes to saying, okay, why does this work the way it works, we aren't there yet. But hopefully we're getting closer every day.
So fascinating, Purva. I think the deeper you go into, it's just so much more to learn and to understand. Just coming back to the previous question about what you mentioned, that for special children, ADHD,
Mhm.
sequencing music helps in sequencing their routine. Can you just
Mhm.
give an example as to, if you were creating a music therapy sequencing for a child who has
Mhm.
who is a special child? What does that create what does this look like? How would that music really help in sequencing his daily routine? What does that look like? How do you do that?
Okay. All right. So let me ask you all this. Right. So you all know the nursery rhyme Johnny Johnny.
Yes,
Yeah.
Papa. Yes.
Okay. Eating sugar,
No, Papa.
telling lies,
No, Papa.
open your mouth.
Ha ha ha.
Correct. Okay. There's another one, which is rosy cheeks.
Dimple chin.
And then, sorry, you'll have to help me finish. Curly hair,
Teeth
teeth
within.
within, eyes are blue.
Lovely too.
Yes.
I'm saying this after, like, I don't know, probably 20, 30 years, but I still remember
Correct.
the sequencing. And even the tone of saying that. I mean, I'm sure all of us have heard this, like, probably in our KG or, something like that, but it's still
Absolutely.
fresh. It's still coming back.
Absolutely. And if you really think about maybe how you first learned the different parts of your face, it's probably through this song. Or how you learned that, okay, don't lie, is probably through,
Yeah.
or even understood the concept of what does it mean to lie. Right, so what is the consequence of it? The way as human beings, that we remember lessons, we remember things, it is predominantly through music. Because when you add that element of rhythm to it, you add that element of melody to it, and you add words to it, when it comes together, it becomes something that's a lot easier to remember, as opposed to just learning it. Right, so I've met a lot of people who've done this, but in history class, when for my board exams, 10th standard exams, when I had to remember all those dates, the easiest way to remember it was to put it into rhythm and melody, right? Turn it into a song, and then suddenly it becomes a lot easier to remember. Or sometimes we wake up with random songs stuck in our head. It could be music that we hate, it could be music that we love, but the fact is, we wake up with tunes and melodies that are stuck in our head. And so therefore, that is the impact that music has. It's something that is easy to recall, it is something that has multiple elements, therefore we make multiple associations with it. And so if I'm helping a child learn how to brush their teeth, instead of saying, okay, what is number one? Number one is open the tap. What is number two? Number two is run your toothbrush under the water. What is number three? Turn off the tap so you don't waste water. Number four, squeeze a little bit of toothpaste on, or rather take the cap off the toothpaste next, right? So these are multiple steps. If you actually really break down the process of brushing your teeth and you write it down as steps, it doesn't look easy at all, right? Same thing when it comes to maybe eating, right? So what are the things that you do? And now, especially because of the pandemic, sanitizing, washing your hands, right? So these are things that you and I understand, but it might not necessarily be that easy for them to understand. Why do I suddenly have to do this? So I have a client who she understood, okay, I have to wash my hands, but then she didn't understand that she needs to wash till all the soap is gone. So oftentimes she will do the whole, okay, wash my hands, soap, scrub, and then run it under the water for 2 seconds and I'm done. But her hands would still be dripping with soap. So the minute you put this into song, right? So simple melody of, okay, let's wash our hands, let's wash our hands, turn the tap on, turn the tap on, run your hands under the water. Or again, I'm just coming up with this on the spot, but the minute you put it into a rhyme, you put it into a chant, it becomes a lot easier to recall.
So what you're saying is you're actually writing the lyrics to help them establish that daily routine for
So
those who have.
that is one of the ways in which we can address sequencing, right? Through, if I have a child that understands the words, can process language, then this is something that I have used with them before. In fact, I used it with a child for her to be able to understand emotion. So I took the song "If You're Happy and You Know It" and I changed the lyrics around a little bit. So I said, "If you're happy and you know it, show me a smile." Right? So when the child sees a smile, the child can associate that with that emotion, right? Or when you're sad and you know it, cry boo-hoo. So multiple different emotions, and therefore also building in like emotional responsive strategies for that child. Another way to be able to do it is to use music itself to create sequences. So we might pick a song that I know the client really enjoys. For one of them, it was "Wheels on the Bus" for a really young child. For an adult, it was a very popular Tamil song that it just released, right? So then I'm creating rhythmic patterns for them to play on the drums. So I have bongos, I have like the djembe, so all these different drums that you use your hands to play, and then we create a patterned sequence. So for them to be able to, one, remember that sequence, therefore focus, also play according to that sequence, is also following that sequence, and using visual and verbal prompting, right? So chances are they're not going to get it. So I had a client that started with just 2 beats and then worked his way up to playing 8 beats in a pattern, right? So using music in itself to be able to create these patterns, to be able to create sequences for them to follow, or knowing, okay, fine, when does the male voice come in, when does the female voice come in, so being able to count those beats, count those patterns, wait for their turn. There are so many different ways in which you can address sequencing when it comes to music.
That is absolutely fascinating. Also, Pura, you mentioned the pandemic. So coming back to the pandemic that we're all into right now, what
Mhm.
sort of music? People are going through so much of stress and anxiety and so much of workload at home. Uh, you know,
Mhm.
there are no boundaries anymore between work life and home life because everything is all together all the time, and people are leading a very stressful life right now. So what kind of music do you suggest that people should listen to? And is sound therapy also applicable here? Would you also recommend, like you mentioned, sound therapy is different from music therapy, it will work more on frequencies. So perhaps for quietening, for stillness, does sound therapy also play a role into all of our the way we listen?
So when it comes to sound therapy, given that it's not something that I've studied or really used extensively in therapy, I feel like I might not really be the right person to talk about it. But what I can talk about is the effect that sound has on the human body, right? So when we get anxious, which has been happening a lot during the pandemic, I mean, even with myself, one of the first physical symptoms that comes about when you get stressed, when you get anxious, when you get angry, when you get worried, any kind of emotion that is creating an effect on your body, the first thing that happens is that your heart rate goes up, right? And then once your heart rate goes up, all of the physical symptoms then becomes kind of like a waterfall, right? So heart rate goes up, therefore sweating starts. Maybe for some people, shallow breathing begins, or you're breathing really fast, therefore you're not taking enough oxygen for your heart rate to come down, and that becomes something difficult. And also, let's be real, how many of us really appreciate it when we're really upset or stressed if someone says, hey, just chill or take a deep breath? Do we actually really want to do that when we're mad? I don't. I don't know about all of you, but when somebody says, oh, it's okay, don't worry, everything will be fine, when you're really stressed or worried, that only increases your stress, because the first response is, what do you know? You're not in my shoes. And that's completely valid, right? Nobody is going to understand what it's like to go through what you're going through, because they're not you. Only you know that. So the minute the heart rate goes up, a lot of these other physical symptoms follow. And for someone that has a chronic condition of some sort, maybe it could be chronic diabetes that has its own set of side effects, it could be a heart condition. When this happens, then all of those other things get triggered, because our body remembers trauma. Right, so I have a particular spot in my neck where the minute I get stressed, that's the first place that will start hurting, even though I haven't done anything to stress it or hurt it in any way, right? So when this happens, one of the first things for us to be able to do is to bring that heart rate down. So if we can bring our heart rate down, then all of these other symptoms will also come down with it. Now, if you look at it from a music point of view, our heart rate, our resting heart rate, is actually between 65 to 68. There is a lot of music out there that is in this tempo. So if you have this app called Spotify, you can actually go there and type 65 BPM, and you'll have playlists of music that is in this tempo, or in this rhythmic pattern. So breathing along to that kind of music. So if you're listening to something with a particular tempo between 65 to even 70 beats per minute, being able to breathe along to that kind of music. So you're breathing in for 4 counts, breathing out for 4 counts. But, or let's say that, okay, your breathing is so shallow, you're not suddenly able to breathe in for 4 counts and breathe out for 4 counts. Then start with breathing in 1 count, breathing out 1 count, and then make it 2, breathing in 2 counts, breathing out 2 counts, make it 3, make it 4, and work yourself up to 8 if you can, right? So that when you are breathing in deeply, that's how your heart rate comes down, right? Or even when you're listening to music, because of rhythmic entrainment, your heart rate kind of comes down to that tempo of music. So that is a great way, especially for those that have panic attacks, or those that have severe anxiety symptoms, that kind of great way to kind of bring yourself back, bring your body back to its homeostasis. And the other thing also that I will say, because a lot of people always ask me this, like, what kind of music should I listen to relax? And I always say, you tell me what kind of music you want to listen to relax. Because for someone, listening to Linkin Park can be relaxing. For someone else, listening to Bhimsen Joshi can be relaxing, right? So it's really important for us to become aware of the kind of associations that we have with music. Now, Carnatic music is believed, or classical music is really believed to be very soothing. It's believed to be very spirituality. But for the longest time when I was a child, I mean, I'm very grateful to my family today, but for the longest time when I was a child, I was forced to go to Carnatic music class, and I didn't want to, right? So my association was not a very pleasant one. So if somebody said, oh, okay, you're feeling stressed, listen to Carnatic music, it would have only made me feel more stressed. Right? At the same time, listening to like music that I really enjoy, like maybe Hindi songs, maybe Shan was my favorite growing up. Listening to that would immediately put me in a better mood, or kind of help me find a way to emotionally balance out myself. At the same time, today when I look back, yes, there were effects that Carnatic music had on me. I would like have a fight with my grandmother and go to class because I didn't want to, and then I would sing, and by the time I was done with my class, I would notice an emotional shift where I would come back home and apologize. Right? So, music does have that effect on us, but it's also very important for you to be aware of what kind of music do you have good associations with, happy associations with, what kind of music do you have negative associations with. Right? And other thing that we follow in music therapy is something called the ISO principle. So ISO principle. Now, the ISO principle says that if you have a client who is maybe going through a lot of anxiety, is maybe very depressed, or is very angry, trying to play music with them or asking them to listen to music that is the polar opposite, right? So like very upbeat music, cheery music, happy music can actually one, either make them disconnect from the therapist, from the music, or it can only enhance what they are going through. So they might end up feeling invalidated because you are dismissing that negative emotion and trying to switch to a happier place. So instead of doing that, we use music as a way. So fine, if somebody is feeling really upset, maybe they had a breakup and they're really, really upset about it. So then address that emotion, address that sadness, address that anxiety, address that anger. Maybe they want to listen to a really depressing Arijit Singh song. You know, it's happened before. So then use that opportunity to listen to that song, and then allow that song to trigger those memories for them so they can talk about it. Allow them to have that cathartic experience with music. Because sometimes, you know, there might be a lot that we want to say that we don't find the right words for, but then when we listen to a piece of music, we end up crying to it, or we end up singing along, or maybe even just moving to that music. And at the end of it, even though we haven't really articulated what it is that we're going through, we still feel like we have expressed ourselves. And that is one of the biggest powers of music, which is why we call it a universal language, right? It could be in a language you don't understand at all, but there is still something that you connect with and you use to express yourself. So if you want to know what kind of music do I listen to if I'm feeling really stressed, you tell me, right? What kind of music helps you when you're stressed? Or what is it that you like to do when you're stressed? Does movement help you? If movement helps you, then pick some upbeat songs. Like I really enjoy listening to Chak De India when I go for a run, right? So because I have that association with that song, I can do this kind of association with that song. And so pick music that makes you feel a certain way. It's not about what kind of music is it, as much as it is about how does that music make you feel. So when you're feeling stressed or depressed or anxious, how do you want to feel to be able to feel better?
Able to, as you said in this conversation, was that to be able to really feel your feelings completely and to be able to sit with your feelings. So just switching and not being able to feel angry, not being able to feel that stress, not being able to feel that sadness, and just brushing things under the carpet is not really going to help you deal with those emotions. And I think everywhere we are taught, if you're depressed, go out and see your friends, or just listen to some music, or why are you unhappy. But it's important because the one who's going through that knows what it is like to be with that emotion. And I think that's a very valid thing, because our culture sometimes ends up dismissing these emotions, and we have to look happy and positive all the time. And sometimes it can lead to something called as toxic positivity as well. So it's really important to acknowledge, validate what you are feeling, sit with your feelings, and listen to music that probably connects to you at that particular point in time of what you're feeling. So coming to the next thing is, so would it be easy, is it possible for all of us to create our own playlists according to our different moods. So can we in our playlist have a set of music when we are feeling upbeat, when we when we are just feeling those positive vibes, create a playlist when we in those days, in those moods when we don't feel so good about ourselves and you just want to also just let yourself be. So is it also easy to create our own playlist? Because that also means getting in touch with your own innermost emotions and your feelings and knowing what works for you. That searching for that music itself, I think, is the journey of finding that connection back to yourself. So would you also advise people to create their own playlist, because you know yourself best, right? You're not creating the music for someone. As you said, you're asking them what makes them feel happy, what kind of music makes them less stressful. So it's almost like enabling us, empowering us to create our own music playlists for our own mental well-being.
Absolutely. You see, at the end of the day, the role of a therapist is not to tell you what is right or wrong, not to tell you what to do or what not to do, but an effective therapist is someone that holds the space and facilitates the journey that you are going to go on to work through those things on your own. Right. So and music therapy is no different that way. So I mean, I can tell you the kind of playlist that I have. So for me, all my playlists are based on the different emotions that I have, and not just like happy, sad. Even within that happy, sad, I have different kinds of happy, different kinds of sad. So I have one playlist which is just like crying songs, but they're all English songs. Right. I have another playlist which is again like really sad songs, but it's a mix of like, these like Dhanush songs, because I relate to Tamil a lot. So like a mix of like all these really sad, like, drunk Dhanush songs and a mix of Arijit Singh songs, right? So a lot of the times the kind of language that we relate to, the kind of language that the voices, in our brain uses also matters a lot. So sometimes, maybe in a certain situation, it's English that I relate to the most, but maybe sometimes in other situations, I need a language that is more comforting for me, because Tamil is my mother tongue. That is a language that is very comforting for me. And when I was in the States, I used to listen to a lot of Tamil music when I would feel homesick, because it made me feel closer to that language, feel closer to that culture, even if I was halfway across the world. So, I have different playlists. I have, even when I'm working out, I have different playlists for that. So I have one playlist that has all of these, I call it, my slay list, and it has all of these English numbers, hip hop numbers, all like female singers, right? Because that makes me it motivates me. At the same time, I also have another playlist that I sometimes listen to when I want to change, which has songs like Chakte India, Surma, Josh, all of these like really, typical patriotic, or, like we can do this kind of Bollywood music. At the same time, I also have Carnatic music that I sometimes listen to. I think sometimes when I pray, sometimes when I feel very introspective, when I kind of just want to sit with an emotion or sit with a feeling. I really enjoy Bombay Jayashree. I really enjoy T.M. Krishna. These are some of the artists that I connect with, I relate to, as opposed to some of the older artists, because of the fact that I grew up listening to them, and because of the fact that they have something different about them when it comes to Carnatic music, right? At the same time, there are like when I'm reading or when I'm writing, I want to listen to Western classical music because it helps me focus. So when I'm reading or writing or I'm doing something that needs my attention, when I have lyrics as a singer myself, it's very difficult for me to read or write and focus on the lyrics. I get very distracted with the lyrics. So honestly, all of these things are things that I've developed over years of trial and error, right? So of like listening to a playlist that had words when I was trying to type out an email, and then I ended up typing out the lyrics instead, right? Or like one or two words were what I was actually listening to instead of what I wanted to say. So look at what works for you, right? Don't be shy to like listen to music. One of the other things that I've noticed is a lot of the times, there is judgment surrounding the kind of music that you listen to. At least, especially for me in college, in school, there is that judgment of, oh, you're listening to, this popular music, oh, you're listening to Anu Malik, okay, you're not that cool. So sometimes we tend to carry that kind of judgment about the kind of music that we listen to even into our adult years, right? Even though it doesn't matter these days, you have so many different apps. You have Savan, you have Wink, you have Ghana, you have Spotify, you even just have YouTube for you to go in, and you can create playlists on YouTube too, right? So really play around with that. Think about your childhood, right? So close your eyes, think about what are the songs that I remember from my childhood. What are some of the songs that I really enjoyed too? What are some of the songs that I danced with, right? Or maybe what are some of the songs that remind me of my mom, remind me of my dad, remind me maybe of my siblings or my school friends, right? And if these memories bring back a happy emotion for you, they bring back a feeling of safety, they bring back a feeling of comfort, then put that into a playlist. So when you're feeling uncomfortable, when you're feeling stressed out, you just need to feel like, okay, everything is going to be okay. Even if, your friends are not with you at that moment, or your parents aren't with you, or your siblings aren't with you, their memories are still with you. And music acts as an amazing trigger for those memories, right? One line from a song, and it can play out an entire movie for you in your head. So make use of that ability that you have, and really think about what are some happy memories for me, what are some things I want to think about, I want to be reminded of when I'm feeling a certain way, and therefore how can I do that. And finally, going off of what I had said previously, don't ever feel ashamed to cry. I think our strength, the strength of the human being, comes from the fact that we can be vulnerable, comes from the fact that we can express ourselves. And it actually takes a lot of strength to be able to cry, whether you do it alone, whether you do it with someone that you are very close to, whether you're doing it with your family around you, or whether you're just doing it in the middle of the night because you don't want anyone else to know. Still do it, because the way you feel after you cry, be it because you're angry or you're sad or you're happy, whatever emotion you're feeling, crying really helps to express that emotion when your words can't. So if you have music that helps you cry, go for it. I have like scenes from movies that help me cry sometimes when I need to cry, right? So don't hold yourself back. Music therapy is not one thing or the other, or it's not just one kind of music. It's not just one particular effect that it's supposed to have on you. The way you relate with music is what makes music special to you in your life. So feel free to explore all of these different kinds of emotions, songs. And if you want to get into music, I want to tell you, it's never too late. It's never too late to sing. As long as you can open your mouth and sound comes out of it, you can sing. Nobody's asking you to go and compete on Indian Idol, but no one's asking you to be able to perform in public. But if singing or if playing an instrument, even just learning how to play an instrument, brings joy to you, it gives you purpose, then do it. Because not every indulgence in music has to end up in performance, and it doesn't always have to be, oh, I'm not good enough, I can't sing, I can only sing in the bathroom. If you can sing, you can sing. What's important is how it makes you feel when you do it.
Purva, just a last question to you before we take some questions from the audience. It is, regarding to your profession as a music therapy. So what is it for you to be a music therapist in India today? And do you have to explain yourself a lot, that what is the work that you do? And how would you really advise people, young people who want to become music therapists? What is the way to go forward and become one?
So I moved back to India 2 years ago. And this was after getting my certification. So completing my education, then completing 1,200 hours of internship, getting my certification, and then working for a year before I decided to finally move back. And, I chose to move back because I felt like, even though I had a full-time job in the US, I somewhere felt very disconnected from my culture. And I always had this idea of, maybe eventually moving back to India and doing something when it comes to music therapy here, because honestly today, if you look at it, music therapy is not a recognized industry yet in India. You do have a lot of people that understand certain elements of music therapy, that are doing things their own way, which is great, but it's still, there isn't a cohesive structure to the profession in India yet. But for me, I kind of just took a leap of faith. And when I moved back, I realized that for the last 2 years, I was the only CBMT certified music therapist in the country. So when that happened, I suddenly realized that the responsibility I have, not just towards myself or my career, but the responsibility I have towards music therapy is a lot more than I anticipated. So half my work, I always say this, half my work is advocacy. Half my work is just creating that awareness, talking about what music therapy is, helping people understand the difference between music being therapeutic versus music therapy in itself, right? To help them understand that music kind of goes beyond just feeling good or relaxing or, feeling spiritual. It goes beyond all of that. And it actually has, through clinical research, through neuroscience research, has proven how effective music can be for the human brain and the human body. And so when I first moved back, I took about a good 6 months to really understand the population, because I'd been away from India for close to 8 years at that point. Kind of coming back with the assumption that, oh, things are going to be the same would have been very wrong of me. So I took the time to understand, okay, how have things changed? What are the needs that, the community has, especially the differently abled community? And I moved back with, the thought that, okay, I'm going to have to convince people of what music therapy is before they want to give it a chance. But when I moved back, I realized that, especially with the differently abled community, they are so starved of therapies that add quality to their life, because you have special education, you have your physiotherapy, you have your occupational therapy, but there wasn't anything that was bridging the gap between their behavioral and their emotional needs. Right? It is so easy for us to assume that because somebody can't speak, or someone is nonverbal, or someone can't communicate effectively, that they don't actually have choices that they want to make, or they don't have emotions that they go through because of that. And so I saw a lot of that happening, and music therapy really helped in kind of bridging that gap of helping them express that, or even just helping them understand what it is that they're feeling and going through. So within the first year, I got really busy, and pre-COVID, I was seeing close to about 100 clients a week, in group settings, and of course across the spectrum too. So right from adults with neurodevelopmental disorders to teenagers with ADHD, anger management issues, mental health was a huge population. So schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, or self-harm. And then of course, neuro rehab is also a space that I work in. So anyone that's recovering from a stroke, surgery, any kind of medical ailments that has affected their brain. So any kind of like neurodevelopmental or neural damage that they have at different rehab centers, and also Alzheimer's and dementia, as well as Parkinson's. So again, huge populations that benefit from music therapy greatly. So this is pretty much the spectrum of the clients that I've been working with. And because one of my passions is not just to practice music therapy, but also to be able to help other people, learn what music therapy is and become music therapists themselves, I took up teaching assignments. So one is at Women's Christian College in Chennai, and the other one at Xavier's right now in Mumbai, where as part of their expressive arts therapy diploma program, I'm teaching the music therapy module for them. But really, my ultimate aim is one to have degrees that are exclusive just for music therapy exclusively. I know there are great people in the industry that are working on creating these exclusive degrees for dance and movement therapy, for drama therapy, for art therapy. So given that music therapy is my domain, I really want to be able to create that world-class education, because not everybody has that ability to move to a different country to study. And it's not fair that that is the only option available for them. And I'm so blessed and lucky to have had that opportunity to do that. But I feel like it's now time to pay it back. And one of the things that helped me the most was the fact that I came from a different culture when I was in the US. And so I think it's high time that we really take what Indian music has to offer to the world in terms of music therapy. So I think that is something that's definitely on the cards for me. It's something that's going to take a while, because I don't want to rush through it. I don't want to come up with crash courses. I don't want to do something that's not going to do justice to the profession. And also, of course, eventually being able to have India's own system of certification, where the copy paste method from Western countries is not going to work here. They don't have 100 different languages in one country. And so it's important for us to be able to address that, to be able to allow for space for different kinds of music, different people, different cultures when it comes to Indian music therapy, and really doing justice to the education as well as the practice and the standards of ethics when it comes to being a music therapist in India.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Purva, for sharing all that information. And I think this seems to be the need of the day. I mean, so many more and more of these holistic interventions, I think people need to understand, how to be able to, practice that, as tools for themselves as well. And, we'll be very happy to share her email address on our website. So any of you who want to get in touch with her, regarding what she does, or, any music therapy sessions, so everyone will be able to contact her and get in touch with her. So thank you for sharing that. I think I'm going to move to the questions that people are asking us. And there's a question, the first one is a question from Ravina, who's asking which type of music we need to listen when we take some break from our studies, and what kind of music should we listen to make ourselves feel fresh.
All right. So Ravina, is it?
Yes, it's Ravina.
Okay, Ravina, when you are studying and you take a break, what is it that you like to do the most, right? So figure out whether moving is something that helps you feel fresh. Figure out if singing is something that helps you feel fresh. Or sometimes figure out if just watching a video that you really enjoy, like a music video, if that's something that helps you feel fresh. So if you know what it is that's going to help you feel fresh, I'm guessing movement usually helps, because when you're studying, you're kind of sitting in one place. So kind of just getting up, doing something, especially away from gadgets, is something that I've come to respect a lot, especially during the lockdown. So then have music that, automatically makes you want to move. So it could be a dance number. It could be, an upbeat number that really gets you excited. It could be a song that you have a lot of good memories with, that kind of just makes you want to dance around your room, right? So then create a playlist like that. So if you actually look at the human brain, our focus, attention span really, especially, studying for hours together, for every 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, right? That helps you keep up that productivity. And it also helps you refresh and restart so that you come back with that same vigor to study. So every 25 minutes, spend 5 minutes listening to a song, walk around in your room. For me, I really enjoy taking a break and playing with my dog, right? So that's something that helps me when I'm sitting in front of my laptop all day. So figure out what it is that helps you feel fresh, and then look at the kind of music that's going to enhance that 5 minutes of feeling fresh for you. It could be movement, it could be singing along, which means I love singing along to Disney songs, right? Songs that I grew up with. So then create a playlist like that. There are so many karaoke tracks also on YouTube. Any song you can find a karaoke track for these days. So then if that's what you want to do, then do that. You don't want to sing in the bathroom, go ahead and do that. Bathrooms have great acoustics, which is why we sound so great when we sing in the bathroom. But figure out for yourself how how do you feel fresh, what works for you, and then work that into your daily routine, especially when you're studying for long hours.
I hope, Ravina, that answered your question. The next question was from Swara, who wants to know which music should we listen to for sound sleep at bedtime?
Okay. Ideally, again, I would say it depends on the kind of associations you have with music. But what I've noticed, especially for myself, is music that has a lower frequency. So not too many instruments in a particular piece of music. So I prefer something that doesn't have a lot of drums or a lot of percussion, because the minute that happens, then rhythmic entrainment kicks in and I'm starting to like move my head, or I'm starting to move some part of my body when I actually want to kind of unwind. For me, sometimes I realize that music doesn't help me fall asleep because it's something that I'm constantly listening to and engaging with as work. So I actually really enjoy listening to bedtime stories. There are podcasts that you can listen to that have bedtime stories. There are also a lot of playlists that I kind of tried and like played around with, even recommended to people, especially on Spotify, which is just playlist for sleeping. So it has a lot of ambient sounds, it has lower frequencies, it doesn't have a particular rhythm to it, so you're not getting rhythmically entrained. It also has no lyrics, so sometimes having lyrics, like maybe a word could trigger something for you, or it could trigger a memory and that could keep you up. So ideally instrumental music with very little instrumentation, that has a lot of ambient sounds, that kind of helps you just drift off or focus on something else, or maybe even music that you can just breathe to, right, that helps your body relax, it helps you get into that space of setting yourself up for deep sleep, are things that you can try.
Then we have another question from Shweta, which is which type of music will help the child who's having developmental delays and to develop speech?
Would depend on the child. It would depend on the language that the child knows, because English is not the only language, right? Sometimes you might want to use, or the child might actually respond to his or her mother tongue a lot better than responding to English. So it would depend on the language. It would depend on where that child is. So what is that child's baseline level of functioning? Does that child have trouble in understanding speech, or is it a cognitive issue where they're not able to process or create speech? Or is it a physical issue where they might have some kind of physical challenge in being able to produce or create certain sounds with their mouth? So depending on that, you can use a variety of songs. So with a lot of my younger clients, I usually tend to improvise. I tend to pick maybe a popular song that they know or they like, or if they don't have a musical preference, then I just have two simple chords that I play on my guitar, and then I come up with my own lyrics. Right, nursery rhymes are so easy for us to remember because the melodies are very simple. The melodies are almost like how we would speak it, right? So find music that is not too complicated. Even just sari gama padhani sa, being able to say these notes, being able to say these syllables also works on different areas of your mouth when you are saying it. So it works on sa, it works on ma, pa, which are explosive consonants. It also has different vowel sounds of a and e, right? So focus on the vowels, focus on, even if you're just singing sari gama pada nisa, one of the things that we do in Carnatic music is we call it akara, ikara, ukara, which is just going and then e, and then u, ow, and right? So make it fun for the child, right? So find songs that have these different syllables. I really enjoy Lakadiki Kati. I still use it even though it's an old song, because it has so many different syllables that really helps you get into that work on your speech. And it's a lot easier to be able to sing certain syllables than it is to be able to just speak them, because the area of your brain that is that you are using when you are singing is different different from the area of your brain that you're using just when you're trying to produce speech. So a lot of the times, the more you sing, that crossover can happen. So find songs with simple melodies that the child can pick up, that the child can sing back. It could also be songs that the child has already been responding to. Maybe the child likes listening to that song. Maybe the child sings along to that song, and then use that as a way to work on the syllables that the child has difficulty with.
Wonderful information, Purva. We have another question from Yogesh. We are getting quite a few questions now. Can you explain how different types of instruments like chordophone, aerophone, idophone, membranophone impacts on brain differently?
So I haven't really come across a lot of research that talks about the impact of different. So all of these instruments that you are talking about are percussion instruments, right? Because they need to be struck to create a sound. So they all have similar but different qualities of sound. So I haven't really come across any research that talks about or that looks at the different or how the different ways in which different sounds can impact the brain. So I might not really be able to do that, but I mean, I will look, and if you want to get in touch with me, if I do find something, I can share that information with you. But ideally, instruments like the chordophone or the idiophone or especially the membranophone are instruments that I like to use with children who have very sensitive hearing, because these sounds aren't too shrill, they aren't too loud or too high pitched, right? So because of that, they are instruments that don't overwhelm or overstimulate a client that has sensitive hearing, and so I enjoy using it. And it's also an instrument that you can really work on your physical skills, you can work on cognition, you can create different patterns with them, and you can also do a lot of music improv with them if you set out just the notes that you want the client to play, so that no matter what they play, if you are playing the guitar, it's always going to be in tune, it's not going to be out of tune. So these are some of the ways that I really enjoy using these instruments.
Thank you, Purva. There's another question, which is, do you consider music therapy to be a doctor? And do you really think that if someone stops all the medicines prescribed by a doctor and just rely on music therapy, would that help?
Okay, so I will say the same thing, you know, about physiotherapy. So if you've been in an accident and you say, okay, only will physiotherapy help, when actually you might need surgery or you might need pain medication for you to be able to deal with whatever has happened, then the answer is going to be no. Right? So again, for some people that maybe might not be on that extreme spectrum of mental health, where it might not actually be a neurochemical imbalance in their brain, it could be something that is externally triggered. For someone like that, then a non-invasive form of therapy like music therapy could help. But for someone where it is a neurochemical imbalance in their brain, for someone where it's genetic, for someone that has severe symptoms where they need that intervention of medication in order to be able to balance the levels of neurochemicals in their brains, if you take that away and you only try a non-invasive form of music therapy, then it's not necessarily going to be as effective, or it's not going to cure. And I say cure because with any form of therapy, we aren't looking to cure, right? Any form of therapy is a non-invasive form of therapy, which means that I can be the best therapist in the world and I'm working with you, but if you don't want to work with me, if you're not going to open up, if you're not going to allow me in, no matter what intervention I use, no matter what instrument I use, no matter what music I use, I'm not going to be able to make any headway with you. Right? It's like saying you can take a horse to the water, you can't make the horse drink that water. So with any form of therapy, the client needs to be in a place where they are open to responding, where they're open to working with the therapist, where they want to work towards similar goals with the therapist. So when you have have a situation like that, then yes, definitely music therapy can help. I've had clients, who started off with medication when they came to me, and then because they had that added support of music therapy, they were able to get off medication faster. Right? Same thing even with talk therapy or having a psychotherapist. You can have the similar results with another non-invasive form of therapy like that. But I think at the end of the day, it depends on, one, what is your association with music, two, what is your relationship with that therapist, so how strong is that therapeutic bond, and three, how open are you to working through those issues, and how much do you really want to be able to do it. And if you need the help of medication for mental health, then there is nothing wrong about it. Right? Sometimes, if you were sick, will you deny medication? If you had a cold, or if you were running a flu, will you say, no, I don't need medication, I'm just going to wait for it to pass? Or are you going to take that extra effort to be able to get better sooner or faster?
Absolutely. Our next question is Zumba a music therapy?
Sorry, can this be our last question, because I
Okay.
do have a session that
Yes,
I
I
need to
do
run.
know that you have other engagements. Let me just see
I
what you
have
have.
another maybe 5 or 10 minutes tops, if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, so again, a lot of people are asking questions about this. Utkarsh Kale was asking, is it useful for psychosomatic disorders, hormonal disorders, cancer, Parkinson's? Can music therapy be used for all of these ailments?
Absolutely. So let me put it this way: when it comes to music therapy, it's not so much about the diagnosis itself as much as it is about the 5 goal areas that that client has. So I can have 2 clients who both have depression, but their goals can be completely different. Right? No two people with the same diagnosis are going to have the same symptoms, and therefore the same form of therapy. And with music therapy, there is no one size fits all. Like, if you look at the interventions, it's not, okay, we use this intervention for depression, we use this for anxiety, we use this for maybe Parkinson's, we use this for Alzheimer's or dementia. So every intervention is customized based on the client and their needs. So every one of them, based on their assessment, are going to have different physical goals, cognitive goals, emotional goals, behavioral goals, and socialization and communication goals. So as a music therapist, it's my job to be able to understand, okay, what are the goals that they have amongst these 5 areas, and therefore what are the different music interventions that's going to actually help them with these non-musical goals. So any kind of disorder, or any kind of medical or emotional issues that someone might have, they will have goals that fall across these 5 categories. So depending on those goals, that's how I pick and customize my interventions for clients.
I think the questions are still pouring in, but I think we will stop because I know you have a busy day ahead of you.
And you can always get in touch with me. I'm on Instagram, Purvaa Factor, Purvaa Factor. You can find me on Facebook. You can message me there. You can also find Maya's Universe both on Instagram and Facebook, and get in touch with me there. Or you can just email me if Mrunal can share that. And Zumba, in a way, can be music therapy. Yes, because you are moving to music, you are rhythmically entraining. I think that Zumba has more to do with the movement element than the music element. But yes, you are moving to music, you are rhythmically entraining. So depending on whether it's therapeutic for you or not, it can be something that you can use as an intervention in music therapy.
Absolutely. So for everyone who have more questions, who want to know about where she's teaching and how you can sign up for her sessions, we will be uploading this entire webinar and sharing all of Purva's links and her email address. So it's easy for all of you to get in touch with her and ask her any more questions that you'll have. But for now, we have to stop for now. And thank you so much, Purva, for giving your time and coming here. And it was such a wonderful, eye-opening, session. I think for all of us, we just didn't know in so much detail what music therapy, sound therapy, and that we could create our own music therapy therapy playlist for ourselves. That was, I think, a huge, takeaway for everyone. And for all of you, as you all know, we are, our website is waitt.in in this Twitter. So do write to us, contact us. You can call our helpline. You can participate, be a part of our webinars. We have one-on-one counseling sessions. So please do visit us, get in touch with us, talk to us, and we're always there for you. Thank you so much, Purvaa, and thank you everyone for being here today and for making this webinar such a fabulous success. Thank you, Purvaa. We hope to see you again and bombard you with lots of more questions in the near future. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and all the very best as a music therapist. I hope many more people, become music therapists and are so inspired by you as we all are. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all. Have a super great weekend. Thank you.